we have started. Welcome to episode something of Season 2 of the Rain Race Podcast. The first official live episode here. Just quick introduction here. Kyle and I made the decision to switch up the format because we figured that with a live show it could be a little bit better in terms of fan interaction, especially if we get some guests on the show in the future. In the past we've had Bob Varsh, we had Andrew Marriott on our last show. We'd like to try to get some more journalists and drivers on in the future, and having a live format where you guys can comment just seemed like it would work better. And it's also less work that I have to do in post, which is pretty helpful. But they will still be going up on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So go check us out. The link is in the Rain Race Podcast Twitter account. But I'm not alone here. As always, I'm joined by Kyle Cuthbertson, the new RacingNationTV.
What's up?
Not so new anymore, but we haven't been on for a while. At least I haven't been on with you. And also, David Land.
Howdy.
This is
like the worst thing ever.
The two connoisseurs of picking terrible races to go to in 2020.
I don't think the Rolex 24 was that bad.
I don't think it was. But you're one.
Yeah, the only thing bad that happened was Kobe went down in a helicopter. Right as the checkered flag came out.
Remember when you said, so I can't say anything off brand. Can't take back on that.
No, you were asking why things went bad. I said that was why they went bad. Well,
I was kind of talking about how you're 1 for 4 on races that you should have gone to. But
hey, guess what opens up for media credential applications tomorrow?
What's that?
The Indy 500.
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that later on.
So if I get approved, that means it's definitely not happening.
Oh boy.
All right.
Chris, I blame you on that, honestly, because you were you talk about us having bad luck of going to races. You're finally going to the Indy 500 for the first time.
Maybe.
Like you've talked about for years. Oh yeah, and then now you have to say maybe. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
You call us bad luck.
Yeah.
How long have you been talking about wanting to go to Indy? You begged to go in 2016.
I did. Yeah, this has been like 5 years in the making. But
talk about us having bad luck.
We are going to be talking about, obviously, I don't care if I get deplatformed, I'm going to say we're going to be talking about the coronavirus, COVID-19. Sorry, YouTube.
Oh, can I say it?
You can't say it.
Coronavirus. Fuck you, YouTube.
All right. These two are afraid.
Oh, hey, we're having a good time. Hey.
David, just listen. Just because you can on a live show doesn't mean you should. Okay?
Sorry, get the bleep button out.
I don't have a bleep button. Anyway, as I was going to say, I'm excited. That's a poor choice of words. The bad thing, obviously, and obviously our concern does go out to all those. We want you guys to stay safe, follow the regulations set out by your local and CDC health organizations. But the good thing that does come out of this, if anything, is that my college, along with many others in the country, has officially moved classes to online for the rest of the semester, which means more Rain Race podcasts, hopefully, if we actually put some effort into this. But before we get talking, what was that, Kyle?
So you have no work?
No, I have work. Work. It's online. Starts Wednesday.
School's just online now.
Yeah. So that's why I'm sitting back at home again in the bug-out basement. We do have a couple people here already. We have Gam Wolfers and Indy GP saying hello, getting the popcorn ready. Well, you should be if David keeps talking the way he is. But yeah, we are going to be talking. We're going to be talking about what happened as a result of this virus, which I'm sure you two can talk a little bit on for no obvious reasons, and what we expect.
I got boned, Chris.
/ what could happen for the future. Starting off, I think a good place to start off here. The St. Petersburg Grand Prix for IndyCar.
Hold on. David, put this on Twitter so we get more people here.
Where's the link?
I put it on Twitter.
It's on YouTube, whatever. So Kyle, I'd say a week ago, I was on Skype with you. It was an Xbox party. We were watching Top Gear episodes. You were fired up, watching the American special, and you were ready to go to St. Petersburg and Sebring. So do you want to sort of give an overview of where that exactly went a bit awry? At what point? Because I know you got there. When you got to when you got to St. Petersburg, were you still at any point concerned?
We were still good. We were still good when we got there, man. we went to dinner and things were still good. Obviously, through the dinner, we weren't on our phones, and that was right when things started going south. So we got back to the Airbnb, where we found the Airbnb that day, and got on the good old Twitter, and the NBA canceled, and things went south, and we
Wait,
that's
not what happened?
Yeah, it was.
No, the story was we were having dinner. We had dinner during the whole thing, right?
Is that not what he just said?
Well, I thought I just said, but we didn't hear about it during dinner.
Yeah, because we didn't look at our phones.
Yeah. That's what I literally just said.
We went out in the parking lot, though. We didn't go back to the hotel. We were like in the parking lot. You were like, "Guess what just happened?" I'm like, "What?" You were like, "The NBA just got canceled." I'm like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah. So the NBA canceled.
And then all the way through the night, it was like, it was just getting worse and worse.
Yeah. So that was the day where that was the first thing where the EU travel ban happened, and right when that happened, we knew that Sebring was done. We knew this. We knew that WEC was done, and if WEC's done, the people from IMSA weren't going to come. That was all going to be done.
Well, there's too many factory drivers. There's too many factory drivers that run both, and if they were all in Europe, I mean, if they hadn't come over, it was like, well, that's over and done with, and then you start getting worried about St. Pete because it's like, there were some teams that crossed over for both like Penske and Dragon Speed that were going to run both races, so then you start really getting worried about it.
Well, just drivers. The thing about it is just drivers alone. That wouldn't be able to show up. That's bad enough because then you get you got to think mechanics and personnel and just the whole picture, not just the drivers. And so if you're looking at drivers and a bunch of them won't be coming alone, then it's really bad. But honestly, going to bed, if we didn't sleep as much as we would have hoped, because honestly, once you figure out that the race you're going to next week isn't going to happen, you have a pretty sleepless night. So woke up and I still had good feelings about St. Pete, and then I think things started to get bad on the way to St. Pete when the mayor announced no fans, and then a decision on the race would be made later. And then honestly, that was at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then from 10 o'clock in the morning to the 3 p.m. announcement, it was just uneasy feelings all day long.
Well,
yeah.
What were you saying?
No, I was just going to say it really sucked that they dragged that out all day. I understand that they were talking to all the series that were involved, but that was, it's kind of similar in some ways. I guess the way I could describe it is, unfortunately, some of the ways that I've had to experience some Pocono races where it almost felt like you're waiting for a death announcement. Just there's no news, no communication. You're hearing rumors, but those rumors, you have to take with a grain of salt. And then you start hearing how bad it may end up being, and it's just like, oh, that's tough. I mean, that kind of stuff is not fun to experience. And this, was, I won't say it's worse, but it definitely was a unique situation in that it's not just something that's happening in racing, or it's not just something that had to do with racing that has caused this. This is something beyond that. I know everybody, I want to just start typing in caps and lower cases going, it's bigger than sports, but it really is. I mean, and it's still going on. There's still shit hitting the fan, so to speak, and I don't know. It's weird times we're living in here.
Well, I want to bring it back to, Wednesday night when the travel ban was announced, because it seemed like it was within 3 hours, really, that the WEC canceled. And they didn't really have a choice. Where you can say that, IndyCar, Formula One, they could have done the race really if they really wanted to, but the World Endurance Championship was kind of just tied up. They have drivers. I'm positive all the teams were in the United States at the time because of COTA. But the
cars were.
Yeah, but the drivers
the cars
weren't.
Are still at Sebring right now in crates.
Yeah.
Because they can't.
And they probably will be there for months.
Yeah, and that actually brings up a good question with the WEC. When their cars are still locked up in Sebring.
Well, I'm sure that's.
Yeah. What about Le Mans?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Takes a while for those to get back on boats because that's where they take. They take them.
Especially when they probably won't be allowed back until maybe the end of April.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But I think that they're pretty much the only series that was tied up. Because IMSA was in the situation... Well, no, actually, I brought up the point that IMSA, they probably had drivers... Well, they definitely have drivers that are over in Europe. That that would have been stuck over there as well, which is why right when the World Endurance Championship announced that they were canceling, I said Sebring or that IMSA had to do the same because they have drivers that are likely in the exact same situation, and they're not going to be able to really get over there. So I feel like IMSA and the World Endurance Championship were pretty tied up with what to do, but at least I'll say that they made a quick decision. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later on because I told you guys before the podcast that IndyCar and Formula One were very, very delayed in their responses. And I don't think anybody can argue that. But they also had the most on the line because they were already, starting their race weekends. The cars, the teams, everybody was already there. But in terms of IndyCar, which I do want to go back to here, not only did they cancel St. Petersburg, but they also canceled Barber and Coda, so that's all the way through April. And they postponed, I'm going to say that in quotes, loosely, they postponed the Long Beach Grand Prix because the Long Beach organizers seemed that they wanted to postpone it to later in the season, maybe even a season finale at Long Beach, I think was brought up. But was it Mark Miles who pretty much just shot it down immediately, saying that they were planning on canceling? Yeah.
And bringing up bad races choosing to go to, David was probably going to go to Long Beach, and I was probably going to get suckered in and joining him. So
I was putting pressure on him the whole time. As soon as we got off the plane, I was like, "You going to Long Beach?"
I probably would have hunkered in and did it actually. So which is easy to say now, but
that's something I was going to bring up later, but I want to bring it up now. Actually, is that it seems like, especially what we've seen with IndyCar and Formula One, their level of communication was really poor over the weekend because they had very mixed news sources coming out left and right saying different things, and they still have it in terms of Long Beach, where one will say the Long Beach Grand Prix is under consideration, one will say, like Mark Miles will say, no, it's not happening. And Formula One, I think, was the worst at that over the weekend in Australia because they had, within the span of 10 minutes, reporters saying that the Grand Prix was going to be canceled. And then I think it was Sky said that it was going to be going on, and BBC said that it was going to be canceled. So I think it's important for series and organizers in this situation to really actually get a single narrative out there, make sure that you're not sending out mixed messages, because it certainly didn't do anybody a service who was interested in the series or who was even a fan. You have to think of the fans who were, I saw many people on Twitter saying, I'm waiting at so-and-so airport waiting for a flight to go down to St. Petersburg. If they would cancel it, I would get out of here. And IndyCar waited until the last possible moment, really, to finally say it's not happening. Granted, they did say earlier that they weren't going to be opening it up to fans, but just the amount of mixed signals that was shown between those two series over the weekend, I think, was a poor look on their behalf.
Well, put it this way, the fans don't rely on the race to happen for their income. So the people who really got screwed because they told the fans not to show up, but all the freelancers and even the people working for the teams and the media outlets, they all had to, the vendors especially, they all had to still come because it's like, well, I guess we got to I guess we got to make money somehow. And if the race is happening, we got to talk about it.
So also, what was the scene like? Because you guys were both media members at St. Petersburg. What was the scene like in the media center? Did it seem, I guess compared to the Rolex, which is another media event that you guys both did, how chaotic did it seem in there with the signals that were being sent out by different sources?
There was nobody in there.
There's nobody in the media center?
It was a setup day. We were there for a setup day. And it honestly, the odd part about it was, for a setup day, how everything seemed so normal. How everything you see for a setup day seemed normal, but yet you knew that it wasn't normal. You knew that it was on everyone else's mind. Literally, cars went through tech on Thursday. Every car got teched, and the whole garage, the whole paddock was acting like everything was going to go off as normal, which, I mean, you have to, but it was so odd knowing, that it was put under question if this was actually going to happen or not, to see everything so normal for a setup day.
Felt like being in a test.
Yeah, really.
Some questions coming in right now that I haven't answered over the past couple minutes. Kyle, I saw that you made a comment about it. I just figured I'll answer some of these right now. Do you think NASCAR and Formula One will reconsider their schedules for next year because of this? Like, for example, NASCAR having an off week every month, or F1 having 2 races a month? I don't personally think so. Obviously, this is a situation that motorsports hasn't really seen since World War II, where major races have been under threat in this capacity. So I don't think that in NASCAR and Formula One it's going to have an effect. Where you should be looking is more towards races like the World Endurance Championship, where actually they said they're committed to coming back to Sebring. But from a similar standpoint, you do have to look at, hey, this race hurt them big time this year. And you'd have to wonder if those races are in question for smaller series like that. I know, was it you, David, who also brought up the same point for IndyCar at St. Petersburg? I'm not entirely sure if you had brought that up or not.
No, well, no, I wasn't. I'm not as worried about St. Petersburg as it would be if Long Beach doesn't happen. Because Long Beach is obviously in the Los Angeles area, and I don't have to tell you that, there are some people in California that maybe don't like automobiles quite as much as other people. And so, if you do 1 year where that is no longer a disruption, where you don't have the loud cars running around and traffic backups and whatnot created by that, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, you talk about a smaller series. I mean, I think you look at something like Formula E. I think they're really going to be in trouble because, first of all, they're probably the most greatly affected by things where you can't have events in large gathering places because you can't really restrict the spectators when you're doing a race in the middle of a city. So and they are so heavily reliant on corporate dollars that an economy slowdown could really hurt them. I think it could hurt everybody, but I think manufacturer-heavy series are really gonna hurt.
Yeah, I mean, Formula E has a difficult enough time holding on to races as it is. I mean, not that they have a schedule that's decreasing every year, but it seems like every single season they're switching out one track for another a couple of times throughout the season. So really it's going to be up to the organizers how much these changes affect the organizers. And it's going to be an implication to every single track for every single event that's been canceled or postponed. But I think that in the end, that's what it's going to come down to is how much it actually hurt the organizers, how much it hurt the general public's opinion. But I wouldn't expect to see a major loss on NASCAR and Formula One side, at least personally. And somebody else said, with the possibility of racing returning with the Indy 500, how big do you think that would be for IndyCar if that happens?
Huge.
It would be huge. It would also be like Tony George would win the split, right when you think Penske won. But right now, IndyCar has said they'd like to get back for May, and I know he said he's going to take it one day at a time when it comes to actually making sure that the month of May happens.
Well, did you see the CDC guidelines that just came out?
The only thing coming out is the CDC said today that events for the next 8 weeks, what is it, 50 people or more, they said, or something like that? Something like that. But they said for the next 8 weeks, they recommend to cancel events for 8 weeks.
Okay, so that would put...
That means the Indy GP would be postponed or canceled at this point.
The GP would be right at the edge of that.
Yes. So my opinion would be that best case scenario, the opening day of practice on Tuesday for the Indy 500 is essentially going to be the world reopening of the motorsports world, which is going to be,
it would be on
massive.
A Monday. Hopefully they would move it to the Monday and we get another day of practice.
Yeah, that's what. Well, see, they're going to almost certainly now cancel the test. I don't see how anywhere that happens. So yeah, you probably could add another day of practice because the teams will already be planning on doing that, and they're going to need as much data on the new aero screens as possible.
That's the one thing I said the other day was, if this is the Indy 500 could literally be the first ever race for the aero screen, and
it almost certainly will be now.
Yeah, already going into a year where there's so many questions on whether how the aero screen perform. It's like, what? The biggest race of the year is now going to be almost certainly going to be the first race for the aero screen?
Well, I'll put it this way, and I think even Graham said this. So, back in the day, things changed every year on race cars. So even though this is a little bit different because it's a spec component on all 33 to 36 to 37 cars that end up showing up. So theoretically, if there's a problem with it, it would be inherent to all the cars. Racing teams have had to deal with this for virtually the entire history of the sport. So to me, it's not going to be. I think it's not going to be as big of a deal as I think maybe some people are worried about because, let's say back in the day, Goodyear changed the tire compound one year, and they used radial tires for the first time, and they kept blowing out. One of the chassis designers, I think it was March, their brand new car didn't work with it. So I mean, things like that have happened before. That the teams will deal with it, and I don't think it's going to. Let me put it this way: I'm way less worried about the aero screens causing a disruption for the Indy 500 than I am the effing coronavirus.
Yeah.
Or way less worried. Did I say less or more?
I think you said less. But
I'm less worried about the aero screens than the coronavirus. Let me put it that way.
I think your point stands. We're up to 25 viewers. Thank you, David. I'm sure you gave me a shout out because I wouldn't have had that many otherwise.
I did. And I also said Twitter David was showing up, not
awesome.
YouTube David.
Oh, Twitter David. Oh, that's what they all want. That's what they don't get on their on your channel at least. But
well,
if you are
they do every now and then. If when Robin Miller shoots his mouth off about how bump day that's Twitter David coming out there.
Yeah.
Puma hat.
He hasn't done that in a while.
Anyway, if you're new here, you knew that this was going to come. I'm going to plug my channel. Just subscribe if you're new, if you want some more of this, because hopefully this happens more often. We're going to be doing more live streams. And provided the month of May,
be there in May.
Provided the month of May happens uninterrupted, I have a lot of big plans, which I'll announce when I get further confirmation that that's going to actually happen. So
plans.
Stick around.
Plans are nice. I had so many plans. Tonight I would have been recording the review of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix. Probably would have already had it uploaded. Probably would just be getting back to the. Yeah, would have just been getting back to the hotel room, ready to get prepared for Sebring. Would have been looking at those views and the excitement coming in. I'm sure there would have been something exciting that would have happened, and we would all got to talk about it. And it would have been some controversial thing.
You assholes! See, I've been thinking this whole when you said the St. Pete review, we'll get back, and in my brain, WEC being canceled feels like so long ago.
No, it's like 4 days ago.
I was thinking like, oh, get home, flight the next day. No, we'd still be in Florida right now, getting ready to have a day off, and then drive to Sebring the next day, and then get that going. And oh man,
it was funny when we were driving back to drop your stupid photo vest off. I kept thinking like my brain kept going back to, oh hey, the race is tomorrow. Oh wait, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, oh yeah, I gotta cover the race. No, I don't.
I have that IndyCar app thing on to where I have all the races already in my calendar, and I got that alert today. The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg is happening at 3:30. Tune in. And I'm like, that would be cool.
Well, by the way, to stay consistent, the start time sucks, and it should be noon. Anyway, go on.
If you're going to go down that road, I should have been pretty much moved back into college by now, but how much that can change in a week.
Yeah, but nobody cares about college.
That's true. Next question was, we're falling behind on questions here because you guys are going I would have been in Florida, 80-degree weather.
God damn it, let me mourn. I've still got the 7 stages of grief to go through. I'm on stage 3. I haven't bargained yet. I need to start bargaining here in a second.
Do you guys think more NASCAR races will be postponed in the future? Short answer, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Because especially with that CDC announcement.
Yeah, I told you that when I was standing there in St. Pete. I was like, there ain't no way NASCAR's happening.
And also postponed, they're going to have to cancel those because NASCAR is already into the middle of November as it is. I see no way that, they could maybe save, if it moved into May, sure, they could salvage some of the bigger races probably. I don't know if it's ever going to affect the Coca-Cola 600, but I'm sure they'd be able to salvage that and move it later in the season. But some of these smaller races, I don't think you're going to see them later in the season. Has F1 canceled Monaco yet? Not yet, but as we've learned over the past week, anything can change at any point.
I would say it's more likely than it's not that Monaco will not happen.
Mm.
I think Formula One. See, here's the thing: the Indy 500 has a better chance of happening in late May than Monaco does, because even though the Indy 500 is obviously an international event, you're only going to have a few different drivers and crew and teams coming over. It's not going to be the massive melting pot that the Formula One is, where you just literally have teams and sponsors and manufacturers from all around the world coming to see that. And remember, the 8 weeks is only the United States government guidelines. Who knows what's going on in the Principality of Monaco? So that's the other thing. You have to realize that the different governments are going to deal with this differently, and they're going to set different guidelines and regulations and restrictions.
But at the same time, Formula One's also in the toughest position probably because they're a world championship with people coming from all over. So.
Yeah, but the Indy 500 might as well be a world championship event. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
it's got that similar, kind of hype behind it.
Well, are all the race shops for Indy they're all in the United States still, though, right?
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's.
Where's Dragon Speed?
Well, actually, Dragon Speed's European. That's the only thing. That's why I said Dragon Speed will probably have the most ramifications of the IndyCar grid.
But yeah, driver-wise, that's where you have to be concerned.
I never saw Alex Palou not on his phone, so I'm sure he's concerned about getting back to Spain and stuff. I mean, he lives in Austin right now. Technically, he has a place in Austin, but I'm sure most of his family and places back in Spain. I'm sure he's worried about that. Jacob
Hunt said, "Move the GP, the IndyCar GP, to the Brickyard weekend if possible."
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, they're already going to have the road course set up for Xfinity. Might as well, right?
That's
true. I mean, I thought that was going to happen anyway, but I thought that was going to happen like naturally.
Well, this might be your opportunity because it might work out better than it would by itself, and then they might be like, "Oh, let's just do this for now."
You know how packed. I was going to say, packed that weekend would be with Cup running the oval, Xfinity would be running the road course, and it's already going to be. People said it's going to be difficult enough to switch the track that many times, and adding IndyCar into the mix would be.
Well, you could extend the schedule though.
Yeah.
I mean, you have some flexibility there. You could run IndyCar on Friday if you wanted to. I mean, I guess the thing that would kind of make my boomer soul happy would be if we get a traditional month of May where we get a couple of weeks of practice.
Okay, Robin Miller.
I know, but I actually want to see that, a couple weekends of qualifying, run pole day on one weekend and then or in the Fast 9 and whatnot, and then have have bump day the next week before the 500.
Fast 9.
What was it? Somebody brought.
And then do the GP in July with NASCAR.
Yeah.
Someone said the dirt. I'm going to answer.
Yeah, I was going
to be able to
bulldoze that dirt track and make more parking.
No, not into dirt. No.
The dirt industry. That was good enough. The dirt industry could be brought to its knees. Many sprint car and late model drivers solely rely on their ability to race in order to make a living. Now, while that's true, that's the thing about dirt racing you got to think about. I already know my local track, Attica Speedway, is canceled for this Friday. That was supposed to be their opening event. But if I could predict, I would say the dirt tracks, especially, I mean, just
they're running Williams Grove.
Yeah, that was today.
Yeah, they were running Williams Grove. But, I mean, if I had to predict, I'd say those will open up within, they'll probably close for a week, maybe a week and a half. But I bet they'll stay open up because you got to think they have those local events every Friday and Saturday. And I'm sure, the drivers who race, they need that income to be able to sustain. So they have to run those events.
The tracks as well.
The track as well needs that to be able to stay afloat.
Aren't those under 500? Do they get crowds that are bigger than 500?
Yes, they are under 500, I believe. So
there you go. I mean, you could do those, and
if you do, and if that is also saying if you want to go see racing, this could also help them bring it to their knees. This could also help them if you want to see motorsports. Go to your local dirt track. This could also help them.
Yep.
CDC announcement goes up to what? The All-Star race? It would be around that time, yeah, because it's around the GP 14th, 15th of May.
The only thing that would cancel the 8 weeks would be the only thing that would seal all the way over would be IMSA at Mid-Ohio, and that's something interesting that I'm waiting to see if happens.
Here's the thing: does anyone really? I mean, look, I get it. I mean, it was controversial when I said this last year, but would anyone really have a problem with the GP or the All-Star race not happening this year? I mean, how many people
have a problem with IMSA at Mid-Ohio being canceled? But go ahead.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's well into the ban. You know what I mean?
Well, that's only like it's a week before the GP.
Oh, hey, so I just got this tweet DM'd to me, which is from Adam Cooper F1, which says Monaco's government has announced that restaurants, cafes, concert halls, cinemas, casinos, and nightclubs will close until further notice. No one expects the F1 race to happen, and that's pretty much sealed it. That was from March 15th at 5 p.m. So that's today at 5 p.m. Yeah. So that, and I didn't think Monaco was going to happen. Again, I would imagine that a principality is going to have different. I mean, it's literally a city. So again, a race that takes place in a city is going to be a lot more difficult. And even though, and this is the funny thing, you're going to have the population of a small city at the Indy 500, but it's different because it's a wide open space, and also, let's face facts, the virus infection has not quite been as bad in the United States as it has been in Europe. So, and of course, Europe also has some different regulations between different countries. I mean, I know they've closed the borders now, but how many Italians have gone into Monaco between now and then, or between now and when they close the borders up? So, the spread of the virus is going to be worse in Europe. So it is going to take them a little bit longer to get things under control than I think they will here.
The one thing too, this is the 8-week thing too to think about. It's not a ban; it's a recommendation. And so, in things like the GP being right at the end, I think that's more. I mean, even like the Indy 500 thing, it's all dependent. I think if things go well by the end of the ban, I think it's like
But you have seen that Penske and IndyCar and NASCAR as well have been willing, when the president makes, or the government makes a decree, even if it's a guideline, that they stick to it.
Also, because they haven't done it yet, but they have the power to do anything up to the capacity like Italy has done. And I mean, if you look at some of the things that they've done over there, where they do full quarantines and they'll do full lockdowns, at that point you're just throwing everything out the window. I'm not going to say.
I hope it doesn't get to that point.
No,
here,
nobody does. But it's a possible. I mean, with the rate that everything's changing, it's possible. I'm not going to sit here and say that.
I don't know how everyone else's state is, but my state's already closed. Ohio, we've already closed restaurants and bars and stuff, and it's just, that's just moving closer to other things.
When you do that, you're opening yourself up to dangers that are unrelated to the virus, in my opinion. I mean, I honestly thought it was dangerous enough to remove the distraction of sports from the population, because what does
David was doomsday prepping. Yes.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, it's being somewhat realistic. I mean, I don't want to sound like a doomer, but I mean, at the same time, you have to be realistic and realize what human nature is. When people are not, look what happens in underdeveloped countries when there are desperate times. It's usually not very pretty. So you have to kind of keep some of that in the back of your head, as not fun as it is to think about. That's the stuff that, in fact, again, that worries me more than the virus to me. The social unrest is the thing that I'm worried about.
Somebody also asked how we think the 8-week ban, in quotes, on sporting events will hinder the development of the next-gen car for NASCAR. Also, you brought up, didn't you, David, bring up the aero screen as well, saying if they go into the Indianapolis 500 practice, that's going to be the first time, I said practice, but it's going to be the first time in a race scenario that's not a test, where they're going to run the aero screen, and it's also the fastest race of the season. It's the most prestigious race of the season. So that's something that I don't really know if we can answer at the moment. You're just going to kind of have to wait and see what happens with that. I mean, certainly it would be, you're putting yourself up for a potential bad scenario if they did have complications with the aero screen in a race scenario. But going back to the Gen 7 car, I
would say about the aero screen real quick is that we spoke to a couple engineers at St. Pete, and they can just take the aero screen off. It's not like integrated into the chassis. So if worse came to worse and there was a problem that was going to make things way worse for the competitors or make a dangerous situation at the Indianapolis 500, they could convert the cars back to the 2019 spec with the AFP and run it that way. I mean, I don't think it will get to that point with the aero screen. I think things used to change all the time in racing, and there are still a lot of old guys involved with these teams that were around when you got a new chassis every year, and you had to make it work. And if it didn't work, you had to work on your car. You had to. So I'm not so worried about that. Now, on the NASCAR side of things, with the development of a new car, yeah, that may be a little bit more complicated because it is a totally new car, and there are going to be several different tracks that they were planning on testing at that now, well, when do you do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say something along the same lines as well. You're limiting development opportunities. Now, I don't know. Would they potentially have to move to using the Gen 6 car for another year? I'm not sure right now. But I think it is safe to say certainly that it's going to hinder the testing opportunities, like you said.
Yeah.
I lost my position in the comments here. See, this is a first world problem I've never had, is actually having so many comments that I'm lost.
I love this idea our friend Steven put out. IndyCar is on the road course, Pine Xfinity to IRP, then the Brickyard on the oval. In a perfect
That's true boomerdom right there.
Yeah,
he stepped it up on me.
Brody in disguise in the comments section.
Wait, is he?
No, because he's always been the one saying go back to IRP. But
David is going to go crazy when he finds out about Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime Video. What
are they saying? I think they're just saying about you being like old school, like whatever.
No, I haven't watched Drive to Survive yet, but I was planning on doing that. I had a podcast to go on tonight, and so I couldn't do that.
Hey, did you know that? Did you know that Prime is having a new documentary series about Nando coming out?
Oh, that's my favorite driver.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, they're capitalizing on something that you could have done. Did a whole documentary. Where was I?
You know what? I got my
name it Nando.
No, yeah, I did. I named it, but I think it's just called Fernando, or something like that.
Yeah, but I don't care about that. I only care when he fails. When he fails or wins, everything in between is kind of boring.
How about the production of the 2021 F1 specs? I guess you mean cars. Ferrari just shut everything down. Yeah, I just saw that right before I started the episode that Ferrari has shut down their sort of F1 factory side of things. I'd actually have to look that up again just to get more details.
They were literally the last corporation in Italy to shut down.
Yeah,
that's very Ferrari. It's like no.
If you're thinking about when the series comes back, and like what you could be talking. One thing in F1 is it's like, I mean, hey, you get a couple more months for them to work on the cars and figure out how to make them faster. But then you think, but if they're having to shut down, factories, it's like, yeesh.
Here you go. How does this affect IndyCar's hunt for a third OEM?
How does it affect IndyCar? Period. I'm not worried about the third OEM. I'm worried about if they're going to have a damn series next year. And people kept saying, hang on, I got to rant here because I'm pissed off now. All these people, when I said, and I got some information early, some people were telling me some things that ended up happening.
Real quick, this is Steven, and I'm sure he did this specifically to hear you rant and go on. But go on.
Okay. No, so this is the thing that makes me so angry. When I said I'm worried for the future of the sport, that was directly when I was told that Barber and Coda were canceled. All right? So I had that information. I knew it was happening. And people were coming at me going, oh, well, you shouldn't be like, oh, well, it's just a cold, bro. I'm like, no, screw you. Because, look, it's not all this. You know, it is the same for everybody, but it's not the same for everybody. If you look at return on investment and you look at a possible, well, there is an economic slowdown right now, but if it becomes a full recession, what is the first thing that's going to get cut? When these corporations are looking at their sporting budgets, IndyCar is going to be the lowest ROI of any of them. So from that perspective, I'm worried about sponsors. I'm worried about sponsors for teams, worried about sponsors for races. And, this is something that's happened before, the global economic slowdown in 2009. And it took IndyCar a while to recover from that. And when you're shutting down races, that's not a good look because you don't know, especially with the street circuits, if they're ever going to come back. So I don't know, man. It did kind of annoy me there. And I guess now I know how some people feel who are in the know all the time when people come at them and tell them they're wrong. It's like, no, mother effer, you're wrong, and you just don't have the information that I have.
I was going to say the last time a recession happened in this country, the series that it killed the most was the American Le Mans series, and they never really recovered from that.
Yeah, and guess which series had the lowest ROI? I mean, they were lower than IndyCar at that point, especially because they were a development series, and IndyCar had become a spec series at that point. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great example, Chris.
I never.
That series was fucking awesome. That series made me fall in love with sports car racing. I mean, I wish, I don't want to say too many things. This is obviously not reflective on IMSA because they're doing what they can to survive. But if I look at the IMSA grid now and I go, oh, GT3 cars, yay. Then you look at like the 2008 ALMS grid where every single GT car was unique, like purpose built. And I don't even think there was BOP. And if there was, it wasn't very, difficult. You had two fully fleshed out fields of prototypes with pro drivers in each of them. Oh, God, it was awesome. God, it was awesome. And they could race each other. That was even better. Like, everybody was going for the overall win. I'm such a boomer. But, man, that was awesome.
We're talking
Open
about
tire
a virus
formula,
this episode.
It wasn't only Michelin. Like, you had, like, Yokohama and Kumho and Goodyear and Dunlop. Oh, so great. Oh,
Okay, my first thing is I never worry about a third OEM in IndyCar because to me that's kind of like Mark Miles saying they're going international, where it's like it'd be cool, but it's not going to happen. And two, I love that because I know Steve. I can see him. He's like, what can I say that'll make David rant the longest?
Dude, Steve called me the other day, and I ranted at Steve for about 2 hours about some unrelated things that I will not disclose on this podcast, but things that pissed me off about the way some things are managed, and yeah. Yeah. I definitely let Steve. Poor Steve had to kind of feel the brunt of like 6 months of frustration. You guys saw some of that in the video where I was talking about how everything was dead and buried and whatever. But it's frustrating too because I worked so hard to get to this point and to see it like all just like fall apart. Now that being said, look, YouTube is going to be the thing that sustains motorsport over the next couple of months. So, a lot of people have it a lot worse than I do. So I want to keep that in perspective. But at the time, man, it just was like, oh my God. It's like you felt like you flew too close to the sun, You're Icarus.
Somebody told you to watch Super GT for the tire development, David.
Yeah, I actually quoted a tweet the other day that was like, man, why can't our GT racing be like this?
Yeah.
It's like,
I was watching the 95 500 today, and it was talking about how the Firestone versus Goodyear and how the tire manufacturers actually benefited off of each other rather than they were like, whoever wins, we both know that we're still, both of us are getting the best out of our buck here doing it, something interesting.
Something about tire wars and tire regulations, people always tell me how dangerous it is. The one thing that I kind of always scratch my head about, I'm like, so you can write safety regulations for everything but the tires? Like, that's the thing that I always get confused about. It's like, and I understand that the tires are like the most important thing on the car, and it's one of the most, one of the things you do not want to fail, period. But at the same time, it's like, we can write regulations for the chassis and the strength of that so that it won't break apart. We can write regulations for different kinds of suspension. I mean, that's obviously something you don't want to fail when going into a corner at 230 miles an hour, and yet we leave that open for development. So it's like, it's like we couldn't get like Al Spire and Kara Adams or some other people who are like unaffiliated but know how to build tires to write regulations and then test the tires to make sure that they fit the spec. It's like, you could do a tire war if you really wanted to. It's just people don't want to put the effort into it.
All right, David, your old times in my days rant is over here. All right, I want to bring it back to. I'll let you do it on another episode. We'll come back next week and let you.
Yes, let's talk about
for 4
esports.
Hours. Oh, I'm gonna save that for a little bit here because I was gonna talk about IMSA and Alberto Sanchez. But hey, what's going on? It's been a long time since I've talked to you. He said thoughts on Petit Le Mans and the Sebring 12 hours to close the season. That's interesting. Sebring as the season finale. Do you think it's going to hurt Petit Le Mans' reputation? Not reputation, but turnout at all, especially since they're within a reasonable driving distance of each other?
Does Daytona hurt Sebring?
No.
There's your answer.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
But seriously though, Sebring as a season finale. I mean, this is something that's
they did it before. It's been done before. Yeah, in the 90s.
Okay,
yeah.
I was gonna say you're gonna correct me if I'm wrong.
Steve will be in the comments here in a second confirming that. But I think they did do it in the 90s. I mean, they used to end the season at Daytona with sports cars. They called it like the Daytona Encore or something. It was like in the 80s. It would start and end the season at Daytona.
Hey, they finally found a way to make the Sebring Encore a good idea.
That's quite true.
That's going to be a busy weekend too. If you're going to have that, and you're going to have Pilot Challenge now, and you're going to have the WeatherTech Championship all in one weekend. It's going to be interesting.
Well,
they're probably just going to pull the WEC schedule for the Encore.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, you give the fans some value. Absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
What was it? Steven said he wasn't even trying to trigger a rant, just the fact that the situation pretty much makes a third OEM impossible.
Because I was gonna say something about that because he does make a good point where, I did point out like a little while ago, a couple months ago, about the OEM situation. It's like we don't need a third OEM, but when you look at the Indy 500 entry list, look at the ratio of Chevrolets versus Hondas, and the Chevrolet's really pushing their limit right now, and Honda's really not.
Well, guess who owns Chevrolet? Or guess who owns Elmore? Yeah. That's why you're seeing some of the engines coming out of them suddenly.
That's the one thing I was noticing, because like for a couple of years, and then now that we have Schmidt-Peterson jumping, or I guess now McLaren, but now you see it kind of shift. It used to be equal, and now it's kind of shifted to where Chevrolet actually has more than Honda.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, again, that's something I said when Roger Penske bought the series. I'm like, well, he's almost certainly going to make more Ilmore engines available because he wants a show to happen. And if having 36 cars on bump day means that Chevrolet has to enter 22 cars, that's gonna be what happens. But here's the other thing about a third OEM. I wish the business model of IndyCar would change a little bit. I think it's cool that you have manufacturers in there. But at the same time, I wish it was a little more like IMSA DPI was in, what was that, 2017, where you had the non-prototype split. In my opinion, that was the perfect modern racing formula. You had manufacturers tightly controlled and regulated, where they could do their own thing, run their own chassis that was, picked from a approved number of manufacturers. And develop their cars all they want, but look, you're going to have a certain performance, and at the same time, because as we know, manufacturers are stingy, rather than outright requiring them to have a number. I mean, I think IMSA did require them to sell their cars, which of course Acura and Mazda have not done, despite the fact that they're regulated or forced to do that. They haven't. But you also had that privateer option, where the privateer could go to Gibson, get an engine, which is unbadged, so any driver, like a Fernando Alonso, could drive their car without any problem. and then you can go and get whatever chassis manufacturer you want to drive. You want to buy a Riley, you want to buy an Orca, go for it. I mean, to me, that was perfect for modern racing. And I would love to see IndyCar do something like that and have an unbadged engine, that's competitive with everything else, so that you can open up the competition and have more people coming on. It shouldn't be, oh, well, can I get a Chevy or a Honda? Or, oh, God, our driver that's bringing the sponsor, well, he pissed Honda off, way back in the day, so they're not going to give us an engine and Chevy's full. Like, that's bull crap, and I hate that.
Do you think if NASCAR tries to go racing before the 8-week period is up, that the CDC may try to force them to cancel/postpone? Well, right now, and I'm not fully aware of everything that's been going around because I wasn't even knowledgeable of the CDC ruling from earlier today. Poor me. But they can still do it. Like NASCAR in St. Petersburg could have raced if they wanted to, because they're not meeting that 500 person. The 500 person quota, was that a suggestion? That was a suggestion, right?
I think so. They would have. Here's the problem: they would have gotten destroyed on social media.
Yes,
it's a PR thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's not that they can't. It's that, and it's a liability thing as well. Where if somebody, you saw in Formula One, if somebody does happen to have the disease and you're going to transmit it all throughout the paddock, that's a massive liability thing on the series' hands. None of them want to really be a part of that.
And it came out today that St. Petersburg didn't even have insurance to cover the ticket loss. So they probably didn't have insurance for, oh my God, what if all the competitors get sick?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why all the local dirt tracks are going to win right now, because they can get away with running these events without, getting the big PR flag, because, they could go under the radar, basically.
Whoa, Champs made the... Hold on. Big news. Champs made the BMW Big Boy GTE in 1/18 scale for Petit Le Mans. Holy crap.
All right.
I kind of want that. I don't know if I want to spend $200 on it, but I definitely want that.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, Steve Kilstock will be happy because it's a Chaz Mostic car. He'll go, oh, that's a guy from V8 Supercars.
Oh, Andrew, too. See, you made me lose my train of thought here. What was I going to say?
You were talking about the CDC.
No, I was going to say the dirt tracks. Okay, Kyle, you're saying that the dirt tracks can run. Now
they are.
They are with Williams Grove. But I'm going to say
that event has 500 too.
I'm going to say, and the thing is that this is going to be controversial, but that's why I'm here, is that they shouldn't go ahead and run the races, because while they can, and while it's probably on the seemingly beneficial side for a lot of these short tracks and the dirt racers, because we mentioned earlier a lot of them are on a very short budget, and doing these races is how they make a living. It would be terrible for a track to fall on the liability end of that, because if a track like that, of that size, ends up with a lawsuit, or a series of that size where you get some small, midget series, just very low budget, the whole series could pretty much go under, and then everything's over if they ended up with a lawsuit.
Well, would you rather go under by not racing, or would you rather go under in style? I mean,
in style, hand some people a virus.
Either way,
in style, huh?
It's not a good outcome.
Oh, Andrew needs a link to the Mostic car. I'll post it in the description. Do you want it shipped from Germany, or do you want it shipped from the United States?
Which one's cheaper?
Because the Germany one, well, it depends. Do you want German coronavirus, or do you want American coronavirus on your Petit Le Mans?
As much as you can, no.
You're damn right. Oh, actually, this is the cheapest one. Watch me sell them. I'll watch me sell all three of these diecasts and screw myself over. Here we go.
Andrew, buy a PC instead.
Technically, they're models.
Well, if it's diecast, I consider it a diecast, so... And it's diecast, so...
Aren't the 118s from Mini Champs are diecast?
Yeah, because Mini Champs isn't like... they're not cucked like Spark. And what's the other one? TSM, where they just cheap out because they're just cheap. They go, oh, well, we can't do diecast, even though they can do diecast, and they do them all the time. Oh, Auto Art's the other one that now
God,
does...
I wish we had individual audio channels here. I'd just cut David off and see how long he keeps going. But
I'm angry. I sat here and stewed all day. I should have made a video or something, because I probably would have.
We'll make a video of Mini Champs.
I don't want to talk about diecast.
It's made people for kids. You know how many people have been saying bring back the diecast videos now that you have nothing to do?
That's a vocal minority. It's like 2 or 3 different people with
please, I've seen more than 2 or 3. Chat, go spam David's YouTube channel to bring back NASCAR Authentics.
No, please don't. No, nobody cares about NASCAR Authentics anymore. Those things are so hard to search for.
David, we went to 3 or 4 different Walmarts looking for NASCAR Authentics. Nobody cares.
Yeah, but we were looking for the trucks. I left everything else. We got that Ross Chastain.
No, left everything else. You got a Jimmy Johnson car.
I did buy the Jimmy Johnson because I was like, holy crap, that looks amazing in person.
Can I go back?
So I'll take that one.
Should I? I was gonna bring this up later in the episode, anyways. But
Steve really saying he wanted 143rd instead of 118. Come on, Steve, live a little. The world is dying. You can splurge on some 118s. I know you have the space.
No, I don't think that's what he's saying. I don't. He's saying the actual 118 is. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's a big boy 143. Oh yeah,
yeah.
You should absolutely get it then, Steve, because it'll fit into your collection perfectly.
Anyway, so we talked about this a little bit earlier on, and this is going to be the most controversial part probably. You said you wouldn't be surprised at all if Monaco gets canceled or gets canceled. So Indianapolis then, and we're on the same weekend.
Don't you put that out in the universe?
Okay, but look at it from a perspective, though.
Do that to
Look at it from. Hey, don't say that this doesn't hurt me. All right, I'm supposed to be there as well.
I'm about to shoot a messenger.
No, but you have to look at it from a perspective. All right, 350,000 people in a.
Well, your perspective is wrong.
2.5 mile track.
Let's knock on wood right now.
I don't have. I got a plastic chest right here. I can do that. Like, does that work for you?
It doesn't make me very confident.
You know, well, are we very confident that the Indianapolis 500 is going to be a thing? This is what I'm trying to talk about here. But
I did say someone say something about like running it without fans, and that's the thing about the Indy 500s. That's not even an option. That's not.
That's exactly
kill the race.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about, because for me personally,
might as well cancel it if you can't run it with fans.
In my selfish perspective, I would rather them cancel it and just forget about it this year than postpone it. Because, well, it depends when they would postpone it to, really. But if they postponed it to September, November, whatever, like all these other people seem to be doing, then I can't go. But you guys can, so that hurts me. But do you think that they would even consider postponing a race like the Indianapolis 500? Or do you think that's too prestigious for IndyCar and the state of Indiana as a whole, that they would rather just cancel it like they have in the past? Because, David, they've never... Besides when it rained, what year was it when it rained and they moved it back a weekend?
That was 86.
Okay. But they wouldn't. Do you think that they would actually postpone it rather than canceling it?
I think you have to. I think you have to run the Indy 500 if at all possible. Look at it this way. That is the one race that makes money. Screw the other races. I mean, honestly, if you got to cancel Detroit, or if you've got to cancel Mid-Ohio, or if you've got to cancel Iowa, you've got to do it. You have got to do it. You can't not run that race. If canceling the other races doesn't kill the series, if you cancel the Indy 500, that sure as hell kill it, because you just can't not run it. I think you have to run it this year if it's at all possible.
What did you think about everybody this weekend saying, thank God, well, including yourself, thank God Roger Penske bought the series at the perfect time? Do you think that IndyCar would actually be in the threat to go under, or at least be in a much worse situation, had Roger not made that decision back in November?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be awful.
Yes. Could you imagine? So, look, the Holman George, I want to say this before I launch into a rant. The Holman George family did a ton for the sport of IndyCar racing. That being said, in recent years, it was glaringly apparent that they had become very, very cheap with their pocketbooks. If you had something that was this challenging thrown on their lap, let's just say they would either close the damn thing down or sell to the lowest bidder. and that lowest bidder probably wouldn't have been Roger Penske. So, you look at IndyCar back in 2008, right before the financial crash. If they don't merge in early 2008, and you get to September of 2008 when the housing market crashes, and you have all those financial institutions closed down, and you have two series that are averaging 16 cars a race, I don't have to tell you what probably was going to happen. This is a very similar situation. 6 months before this coronavirus crisis, Roger Penske buys the series, injects the series with a lot of stability based on Roger Penske's own personal net worth as well as his businesses, which produce billions and billions of dollars of revenue per year. That's an awful big pot of money to sustain something for a couple of years until it becomes financially solvent again. So I don't think IndyCar is absolutely doomed, but I think there could be some serious changes coming, and I think they absolutely have to run the Indy. If they only run one race this year and they have to run it in November, they have to run the Indy 500. They have
Can you imagine? Just thinking about it. Could you imagine an Indy 500 on Labor Day? Could you just? It just feels weird. Could you imagine?
They have to do it.
I could imagine sitting in my college dorm room on a 27-inch monitor watching it from my uncomfortable chair. Man, you guys soak it up in person.
Boy, I'm gonna be
you want to see me launch into a ballistic rant? Don't. Oh, I already know what you're gonna say, David. You're gonna say, boy, just skip class. Let me tell you something here.
I would have skipped. You realize how I skipped class to go to that Kurt Busch test. It was one car, and you stand around on the stupid mounds for like 6 hours and just kind of wait for a car to go by once or twice every hour. Let me tell you something, Chris. There is nothing you're going to learn in that college classroom that's nearly as important to being in those stands during the start of the Indy 500.
You may be right, but there are implications that would prevent me from doing that.
You're
that I don't
for
feel
it.
like
Just
talking.
Tell them to go
that I
kiss
don't feel like
week.
saying off air, or that I don't feel like saying on air. I'll explain afterwards. Anyway.
He's got a girlfriend. That's
not. What would that? Why would that be a problem?
Because
that's usually problem number 2 for college people. It's usually problem number 2. They have a girlfriend that says, "No, you have to stay with me this weekend instead of going to a race." It's called being whipped, Chris.
Enjoy T1, Chris. What do you mean? I'm not. Are you saying like this year at the Indianapolis? I'm in turn 3.
So you've got tickets. You've already paid for the tickets, and you were just going to.
Oh yeah, I have them at my house.
Yeah, and you're just gonna say, nah, I'd rather sit in class.
Would I rather? Hell no. But sometimes it ends up like that. Indy 500 during the day, Southern 500 that night. Oh man.
Oh no.
That's like the Coke 600. They run 600 miles on Darlington instead of 500.
Andrew came in. He said, "Honest question: IMSA at Mid-Ohio canceled because of the new CDC report." Wouldn't be surprised.
David,
almost certainly.
David, if IMSA at Mid-Ohio happens, and it'd be the first race back, would you change your stance on going to that race?
Well, okay, so I could probably change it because the test day is probably not happening. I mean, previously I looked at the IMSA Mid-Ohio race and I said, well, I could either pack for a month at Indy or I can go and waste some more money and drive a week early out to the Midwest to cover an IMSA race that, while again, I love IMSA, but
the thing about that IMSA race is your cameraman will let you stay at his house. He will drive you, and it's pretty much going to be the cheapest race you'll go to all season.
Well, true, but again, it's not completely free.
Your cameraman will not turn on the mics during the Sage Karam interview.
Yeah, let me tell you something. That Sage Karam interview was a banger too, man. I actually got Sage to really open up and have some interesting insight. And
let me just say, I got back when David left, and I stayed at the media center to figure out why I didn't record. I literally turned it on and off, and then just spoke into it to see I just right off the bat, hey, let's just press record and try and see, see if there's anything I can figure out. Talked into it and it recorded sound. So it's just I didn't change a thing. It was just just something odd happened. It was just
Just one of them misfortunate things.
Freaking sucks.
I was gonna also talk about, because this was briefly mentioned earlier on, but the freelancers like yourselves that got hurt this past week. And I know you guys can pretty much continue making content. David, you can hop on iRacing, go wreck some kids, and scream Tony Stewart yelled at me in game chat.
And I'm planning on doing that.
And,
maybe not the Tony Stewart thing, but definitely. You know what? If there was one thing that was really good about this offseason was building that PC.
Oh, yeah. Kyle bought a Mac instead.
Yeah, boy.
It's all right.
That thing's not a great. He was like, I can't find out. I kept telling him to do things and he didn't know how to do them, and it was like, oh god. Like this has made things worse. Your phone was more productive than this stupid Mac, and you could have gotten way more PC for the price you paid for that Mac. By the way, could have gone to Best Buy and got something with an i7, but no, we need to get a Mac because it makes a cool ding-a-ling sound when it turns on.
No, the freelancers though, we're not talking specifically Kyle here,
Yes.
right? So if you have,
there were a lot
photographers,
of media.
There were a lot of guys who got absolutely screwed.
The ones who got
a lot of who had a Mac.
The ones who got screwed the most though, because they have absolutely nothing to do, are the photographers. I think. You look at the people who write articles, the journalists. I forgot the official title for them, despite the fact that I want to do that. Yeah, they can write all day about. Oh, Long Beach might be happening. Long Beach might not.
Or they can write historical articles. I mean, that's part of what I'm going to be doing the next couple of months. Is I've got a lot of historical content that I've kind of been had on the back burner forever because it's always been like, well, there's always this constant stream of current events to talk about. Well, now there's not so many current events. Obviously, there's a lot of them, but it's not as much interesting stuff. It's not very engaging content to just constantly talk about what it's on again, off again with Long Beach. But talking about, hey, what were some incredible bump day moments throughout the years? Hey, that could be a cool video,
Mm-hmm. I do want to give a quick shout out though. If anybody here, because we still do have a handful of viewers, know anybody who was affected specifically, who's a freelancer, I know that Graham Goodwin from Daily Sports Car put up a thing that he wants to try to help all the freelancers in some capacity. So go check out dailysportscar.com. If you do know anybody in that situation, try to get them some help because they are desperately needed in the motorsports community. Unfortunately, just left right now without many things to do. I'm trying to think of what we haven't talked about yet because it's kind of been a jumbled stream. This is what happens when you get the Rain Race podcast uncensored, unfiltered too. Now you get to see all the stuff that I have to sit through hours of editing while these guys go off track. And it's usually better, to be fair, when we have a guest on. But then it's also a lot of me sitting here saying, I want to go talk about, and that's a problem. That's what I don't have to do now, which is great. Hopping back to a couple questions here. I'm not going to answer too many that aren't directly related to what we're talking about here. Andrew, should you go to Watkins Glen? Yeah, sure, if it happens. These are not that relevant questions, but these guys are talking to each other here. I guess there weren't any.
So Jacob, NRTV Racing Network, brought up something interesting. It's crazy to hear people say that Atlanta Motor Speedway having one of its one and only race for this year get canceled isn't going to put them in a bad spot financially. Which the thing is,
they're screwed.
Yeah, most certainly it will.
Well, yeah. I mean, even look at St. Pete, like you said, David, didn't have the insurance for that. How many tracks do you think do have do you think? Well, hang on. Which tracks did say that they were? Because Barber said
they were. Did Atlanta have a refund policy thing coming out?
I saw something about Barber because I think Barber said
Barber's refunding tickets.
Yeah. Well, it also must be easier now when it's not specifically the race weekend. But I mean, even Coda for IndyCar, the MotoGP got moved to I think it was November for MotoGP.
If it happens, that's the other thing that all these these are tentative dates. I mean, it's
the thing about Atlanta losing their date is if they're refunding, then that means that their insurance covered it. Because that's the thing is, some of these big organizations have insurance in place to cover these types of things, and being freelancers being affected, is freelancers can't get small business insurance. They can't get any type of insurance. They will not. The insurance companies simply will not cover a freelancer.
The other thing about Atlanta is it's a part of a corporation. So, even though it sucks for, it sucks for Atlanta, the people who work there, it's probably not a killer because they can probably eat that loss on the revenues generated by Bristol and Las Vegas and things like that.
Well, I said earlier on that it's going to hurt pretty much everybody or all the different tracks from no matter how big or small they are. We talked about the small dirt tracks, how having no events could really put them under. But even look at COTA too, because I remember when we did our episode with Adam Stern, David, you and I talked about how they were in financial. I think Adam brought up that they were in financial issues at the time. And having their second large, I'd assume MotoGP is their second largest event of the season, and IndyCar canceled. Must really be a huge blow for a series like that. I'm not sure the status of their financial issues. I'm not sure if they've improved since then because that was around a year ago now. But it's certainly something to consider that it doesn't really matter the size of the track. It can still hurt everybody.
Well, I think COTA has been operating at a loss. So, I mean, they spent a shit gazillion dollars to build that place.
Well, you remember last year during the Adam Stern episode when they talked about COTA, that was when COTA didn't get, they're not getting the money from the state.
They screwed their taxes up, so they lost their tax credit, or not tax credit, their handout from the government. What is the word for that? We'll just call it a handout from the government because that's what it is. That is the thing, is that these new tracks, they are not free from, I think many people worry about old tracks. I think I would probably worry more about new tracks. Because if you look in the past, there have been a lot of tracks that have been built and then torn down within 10 years. Ontario Motor Speedway, Chicago Motor Speedway, things like that. Those tracks did not last for very long. Those tracks were in major markets. Austin, Texas is a major market. It has major series racing there.
You know what?
But
the thing about COTA, right when this, right when the live stream started, Marshall Pruitt released an article about how COTA has been laying off their staff in reaction to losing their dates. So you got to think they lost IndyCar, right? But their MotoGP event is now in November, and they got lucky where they already ran their WEC race. But they're already laying off staff.
WEC didn't make them any money.
Wait, WEC made nothing. You're right, because there wasn't a single person there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just I'm sure WEC paid them a sanctioning fee,
right.
But that God only knows how much money that was. Probably wasn't much.
One of those things. Probably one of those.
They probably broke even. They probably didn't lose any
money. One of those events where it was probably where kind of like when we go karting at Mid Ohio, where we have to rent the track. It was WEC probably had to rent the track. It wasn't some sort of deal.
Yeah, they rented the track, and then COTA opened the gates and said, "Well, we'll just take whatever we get ticket sales wise as gravy on the top."
Which was pretty much how Watchland IndyCar was for those few years in 16 and 17.
Yeah, that sucked. Those were pretty good races too.
That was IndyCar literally renting the track because Boston had to screw them over.
Woo.
Well, IndyCar screwed themselves. They
never trust those Bostonites.
Well, you shouldn't try to be doing new street races in the year 2020 or 2015. That was, but it's
2015 IndyCar was a different breed. Make fun of their own campaign.
They thought racing at New Orleans was a good idea. Ooh.
Remember where that Brasilia race?
Oh yeah.
That was ran on
they were going to run the original aero kits too. They weren't even going to run the.
I was thinking about I was thinking of videos of the last time an IndyCar race was canceled. Well, you got Boston, you got Brasilia, you got. Yeah.
No, but I was going to bring up actually the tracks that I see hurting the most are actually the big Formula One venues because COTA is one of them. And when we brought up COTA, I was starting to think of some other tracks over the years that when they lost F1, they were pretty much reduced to nothing. I mean, you look at India. India's down to some regional events every year now. Or you look at even Malaysia, they just lost their F1 event. I think they still hold some Asian championships there. But pretty much when a giant Grand Prix circuit like that, or Tiltdrome, loses Formula One, they're in big trouble. So we talked earlier about how somebody asked the question, do you think that Formula One is going to take events off the calendar? I don't think they're going to try to lose events, certainly. But actually coming back on that now, I think that it's a possibility just because maybe the tracks won't even have the money next year. Who knows? I mean, Zandvoort just did a huge renovation, and it looks like they're not even going to have a race there this year.
Yeah.
So it's just some things to think about. Yeah, Korea as well. Somebody brought up Korea.
Vietnam totally not happening. Another thing to think about too is I remember I saw videos. You think about Australia and what happened like over the weekend. I remember I saw videos of fans turning up at the gates because remember they waited so long to announce it was actually canceled because F1 even after McLaren bailed, they were trying to fight it and they were trying to run no matter what. And when they canceled it, I remember seeing videos of literally fans at the gate with, like workers on like megaphones saying stuff to hold on, So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and even Formula One didn't cancel until after it was Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen were on a plane out of there. Do you think that they even would have canceled had it not been for that? I mean, it seemed after McLaren leaving that they still seemed to be pushing through it.
Oh, yeah, F1 still wanted it to happen. They were fighting for it. Mm-hmm. They were fighting for it big time. That's why it took so long.
I saw a photo outside St. Petersburg that looked like it had the same. It was certainly a group of people. I'm not sure if it was just people there who were media or... but
no, that was the day. Those were fans trying to just see what they could see from outside. Certainly that was Friday. That was one of the saddest things ever because that was after they announced the no fans. Because the people showing up at the gates in F1 that was before the no fans. I mean, they waited so long to announce that people were still showing up, thinking that it was going to be normal. But St. Petersburg, those were just fans trying to. And another thing about St. Petersburg is if the race would have happened on Sunday, I guarantee there'd be people everywhere trying to see the race. Like there'd be, the hotel and the backside of the course would have had a ton of people trying to watch. The people on those yachts by the bay, they would have been watching. They would have still been there. You have to imagine the entrances to the track would have been filled with people who came to the event that couldn't reschedule a flight. That would have just been sitting there outside the track. I mean, I certainly. If you're even in the city, since it's a street race, you could be in the city and listen to the race. So, that's another thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, street circuits obviously took the biggest hit. Australia is technically a street circuit. St. Petersburg's a street circuit. They spent, I don't know how much exactly setting up those tracks, but certainly an amountable sum of money setting up those racetracks. It has to be in the millions. Promoting it, likewise. And then to cancel at the last minute was certainly a high-pressure situation. I think that the city officials had to have been putting some pressure on the organizers to cancel the race when they saw people like lining the fences outside the track. At that point, it's still a liability.
What did it on Friday was Trump declaring the national emergency. That's really what put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
For NASCAR, too.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about NASCAR is they announced... Because the thing I was BS about, I thought, was, the team, so basically the whole thing, IndyCar and NASCAR. I mean, it's like IndyCar, everybody was there Thursday. The whole paddock was there. Everyone was there. If you're going to get it, you're going to get it. Everyone who was supposed to be there was there. Okay. NASCAR was the same way. They were taking cars off the trailers Friday morning. Trucks thought they were going to qualify that night. People who were there. I mean, and I think for this to have been right with no criticism, really, for one, all this emergency stuff probably should have been a week earlier, maybe. But outside of that, I think right when WEC canceled, right when IMSA canceled, that's right around the time I think IndyCar and NASCAR should have just said that it's over. They should have just right then and there, because that they were trying to go for the TV number without any other sports. That for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the team's sake, the media's sake, everyone's sake, I think right then and there, Thursday morning, get it over with. And I think one thing I heard when you say, the officials had to have been putting pressure on them. The one thing I heard two different things. I heard it was all the mayor. It was all the mayor's decision. I heard that. But then I also heard that it was a joint decision. So I don't know what to believe. I would probably err on the side of it being the mayor because I would think the series probably would have gone ahead without it being, without someone else telling them no.
Right. I mean, there's just a couple final points here that I want to hit up because we're about to wrap things up here. But James Blankenship said F1 was so slow in canceling because they wanted to get their sanctioning fee from the Australian government. It was a game of chicken to see who was the one who canceled it. I actually didn't think of the details about that, but that seems like a good point, actually, because you have to think of the sanctioning fees. Completely forgot about that.
And that was pretty shitty, to be honest. That again, we were kind of talking about how all these organizations handled this. I thought the top 3 organizations, which are IndyCar, NASCAR, and Formula One, none of them did it very well.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, at that point, you're playing with heavy stakes. You're playing with, the well-being of people. And if you're that concerned about, I mean, obviously, they're all in it to make money, but I don't know. I'll always stand by the fact that was poorly handled. They should be acting in the best interest of their fans' safety. But, and then the last point, I guess, to bring up, since it has kind of been lingering, is esports now king for a little while until everything comes back? Yes. We saw there were 2 big sim races today. One of them was an R Factor.
I only watched one of them.
Bunch of F1 drive. I mean, both of them. I think both of them didn't live up to be as great as they could have been because they both kind of had not really connection issues, but I think that they could have. I mean, I'm gonna say I think they could have been planned a little bit better, but they're on such short.
They were last minute.
Yeah, they were.
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. Here's the big point. I am going to make a video about this. I don't know if it's going to be This Week in Racing or if it's just going to be its own video. But I think sim racing has to be very careful here because the last couple of months, all we've heard is we're not a replacement. We're not a replacement. We're something different. We're something different. Now suddenly they're a replacement. So when the real racing comes back, how many people are actually going to care about sim racing once real racing comes back? So I think they have to be very careful not to fully commit to this replacement thing because I think it could, in the long run, it could hurt them because that's all people are going to think of them as. Well, real racing isn't here. I guess we'll watch this iRace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. One of our longer episodes, but that's kind of bound to happen with a live episode with questions. I hope you guys actually enjoyed that format. I certainly liked it. Actually having fan interaction there made it a lot more interesting, and hopefully you guys listening enjoyed it as well. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. All that will be in the description on our Twitter account, or the bio of our Twitter account, which is just @RainRacePodcast. Thank you to Kyle and David. Go check them out as well. I'll have their channels. Of course, you're probably already subscribed to David and Kyle for that matter. But their channels will be in the description below. And as for myself, subscribe if you want to see more. Hopefully the month of May ends up happening, and we're going to have a lot of content. Appreciate you all sticking around, and hope to see you soon.